Good evening. Welcome, Deric Whaley, to the A Hand Up Recovery show here on CAN TV. And I just want to thank CAN TV for allowing us to talk to people about the gun violence situation in Chicago and some possible solutions. And today we're going to hear from Deric Whaley. Deric Whaley is the author of The Ride. The Ride is a book that talks about incarceration, talks about Deric's ride to incarceration. And I'm going to ask Deric about some solutions, and I'm going to ask him about the prison system. Is it really effective? And so we're going to talk about possible solutions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I heard or I read in the book, actually. Deric, tell me about your book.
Well, the book is called The Ride, and I have a video on YouTube, and I'm in the process of making this a non-for-profit book. And the mission of the mission statement of this book is that reading is fundamental to education. And if I could move forward with that message, it possibly could help deter the gun violence that's overtaken our cities and cities across the country as well.
So there's a lot of talk in Chicago and around the country about reentry. And there's a lot of success stories. Talk about some of the success stories that as resulted from the ride to incarceration. You mentioned in the lobby a few seconds ago T.O. X-Man Hardiman, Benny Lee.
Well, T.O. Hardiman, he's engaged in an organization called Violence Interrupters, and what they do is they go out into the community and they try to intervene with violent potential gang-related situations that develop. And Brother Benny Lee, he's conducting workshops, and he's being asked to come around the country to speak about gun violence and the deterrence that can be used to implement a change. And some of the changes that need to be made needs to begin and when an individual is incarcerated in the prison system. That's where the real changes need to start taking place. And those changes and integration isn't happening. So an individual comes out into society, placed back into the same neighborhood with the same ideation and the same ideas, and they revert back to old behavior, and that leads to more violence in the community.
And it eliminates the joy and happiness and peace of mind that they can, have before they end up in such situations. Bad apples become rotten, you talked about a little bit.
Yeah, we were talking about the bad apple. And see, what happens when you get bad apples, the thing that you do is you take the apples and you sort through the apples and you clean the bad apples out of the bunch. Now, once you clean the bad apples out of the bunch, to give you an example, once an individual is incarcerated, he's considered a bad apple. So what do you do to the bad apple? Do you throw it away, or do you still try to make it useful? And the prison system needs to make those bad apples reusable. And what you do is you cut away the rotten part of the fruit, and the apple has been given a new opportunity and a new chance in life. And I think reentry from the standpoint of the penal system to the release needs to be readjusted, and more services for the incarcerated implemented within the judicial system. Because the way it's set up now is they get an individual, they incarcerate an individual for $30-something thousand a year, and none of that money is geared towards re-educating or reintroducing that individual back into society. And then once they get out into society, they got a parole agent to greet them at the gate. But the parole agent isn't offering any services, and individuals isn't being walk to any positivity. They just left the thing for themselves to come up with their old ideas. And either you completely change your old way of thinking, or you'll go back to the old using ways. So they need to be implemented with some new creative ideas like education, housing, schooling, mentorship, and a wealth of other programs. Brandon Johnson just hired some individual to be the head of a reentry program that they're now beginning, but I don't know what the ramifications of that program is going to be. But it's a right step in the right step in the right direction. These individuals are coming home, and now there's going to be an agency that's going to work closely with them to provide them with housing, to provide them with employment opportunities, and reintroduce them into society. And that's what's needed with the penal system, to reintroduce these individuals, place them around positive role models with positive ideas. The more positivity you receive, some of it's going to seep through, and the individuals are going to start having more positive ideas.
Thank God for recovery houses like a Hand Up Recovery Homes that has taken a lot of people and helped them, gave them that stable housing, gave them food, gave them access to job training, gave them access to a community, churches where they can actually move and gain new friends. People, places, and things was one of the main problems. So behavior modification, Mr. Whaley, is key to one of the goals of incarceration is behavior modification. Talk about that for a second.
There's no behavior modification going on in the penal system. The only thing that's going on, like I said earlier, is just incarceration to do the time. There is a few
That's bad news.
programs that's offered, but nobody is working closely with these inmates. When an inmate gets convicted and they shipped out to the penal system, there's different training classes, different pottery classes, but there's no individual counselors. But how can an individual counselor give some personal attention to an individual when he has anywhere with a client list of 1 to 300 individuals that he had to work in? I think it may be a need where they may have to hire more counselors in the criminal court system to work more closely with these individuals. And these individuals so overworked and overloaded, all they want to do is come and get a paycheck, sign the white sheet of paper and move that individual on. But nobody is interviewing these individuals saying, what are your dreams and aspirations? What do you want to do different this time on this incarceration when you get out to make a positive change, to be a responsible, productive member of society? I never seen it in the penal system. There's a few counselors that have hands on, but we need strong counselors like Brother Benny Lee, to go back into these penal systems and offer these guys a vision, a hope, and a roadmap how to get off of that train that's going down the same direction, jails, institutions, and death, but going down the road of positivity and success and employment and family.
We hear on the news that most people that are arrested have drugs and alcohol in their system. So is drugs and alcohol really the problem, or is it lifestyles? I think your book talks about lifestyles as part of the...
They both are equal part of the problem, drugs and the lifestyle. The lifestyle is when you're surrounding yourself with individuals that's engaged in negativity, and as well as with the drugs. When you're engaged with the drugs gravitate you towards individuals in a negative lifestyle. So we need to address both of those issues, the drugs and the lifestyle, and try to alter alternatives to that lifestyle and alternative to the drugs with some guidance and leadership, and have individuals that, like myself, have personal experiences about being incarcerated, personal experience about drug addiction, personal experience about lifestyle, and show what I did and what they did to make a change. I have an individual, I'm not going to say his last name. His name is Liddell, but right now he's engaged in training people in Forest Park. An individual that get the confidence of individuals that he could train, and at the same time he could share his lifelong experience and stress with those individuals about his journey through incarceration. How did it take him to finally get to train on the right track to be a respectable, responsible member of society? That's what the ultimate goal is. And that's what one of the things about my book is, through education, I'm informing individuals what can happen if you don't get on the right track, that what the end results can be: incarcerated.
Thank you for that information. How can we really reduce recidivism?
Like I said, we could reduce recidivism by having more counselors in the judicial system and more opportunities, and at the same time implementing books like this in the penal system and having former incarcerated individuals come out to these organizations. I think that we should start at the 7th or 8th grade. I think this would be the perfect setting for an individual, because that's when the mind begins to develop the idea of the lifestyle that an individual is going to be engaged in the 7th or 8th grade, 6th or 7th or 8th grade. So I think that books like this need to be implemented in the educational system, out the school programs, so the individuals will know what's at stake if you drift into the negative life. I've been on the bus with individuals that 14 years old and they're never coming home again, and now they've committed this crime and they're crying like a baby on the way to the penitentiary because they know they're never going to come back home to their families again.
You mentioned watching free birds fly.
Watching free birds fly, that's a pet peeve of mine, because when you watch free birds fly, you see that how they don't have anything blocking their way and they can come and go and do as they please. But when you're incarcerated, you're like a caged animal. There's always a diameter or perimeter that you can't get past, and there's the worstest feeling in the world is to be stuck in a perimeter and you can't get out. So just imagine how caged animals feel. If they could express it, it's not a good feeling at all.
On the outside, clean folks escape into escapism.
Escapism. Well, it's a lot of different type of escapism, but it's about having some positivity in whatever you engage in. It has to have a positive effect, and it has to be something that's going to benefit society or the individuals that you be around.
Making meetings, literature, self-centeredness you talk about. So in 12-step programs and recovery programs, making meetings is important, and people that come through the Hand-Up Recovery Home, we encourage them to come to our recovery meetings on Thursdays at 5 o'clock at 4032 West Van Buren, so that they can talk about their situation. They can hear testimonies, they can hear stories, they can hear people like you, like me, like Wilbur Cook, our executive director, talk about situations and talk about solutions. And thank God for recovery groups. Thank God for group therapy. Group therapy has helped a ton of people. And recovery group therapy is actually free.
I would just like to interject on that, what you said. This program that this individual is trying to do is something that's most needed in the neighborhood. We need a place where individuals can have re-entry without the pressures of financial stability right in hand, because you got to be responsible, but gradually make an individual come responsible for their well-being, but not under pressure as a training program. I know when these individuals come home from the penal system that the government is willing to fit the bill for a certain period of time till these guys are integrated and reestablished by hanging with positive role models. When individuals see individuals like Benny Lee, who had a life sentence, if this guy could come home and get a life sentence took away and get another opportunity, and he's succeeded and he's respected and loved by the community and loved by the politicians and the professional sociology system. So that would be what we need. We need more people to step up and open up facilities like this so that we can give individuals an opportunity and a chance to get it together. But like I said, that's what we lacking. But this program that this individual is starting with this halfway house, it's a great thing, and I applaud it. And I know he's going to get the support of individuals in the recovery community 100%.
Most people have ideas about writing books like you wrote The Ride and don't follow through. How did you actually get started, and how did you follow through and make this happen, come into a reality? so
Well,
you can flip through the pages and learn.
what happened is that
Reading is fundamental.
reading is fundamental. I went to Columbia College and I majored in television production and journalism. But as a result of me choosing to live in the lifestyle, I dropped out of school and wasn't able to finish and complete my education. But when I got incarcerated, I still remembered those talent and skills that I had, and I said it's time for me to try to make a change. And I reached back to some of those educational values that was incorporated in me when I went to Columbia College. And I saw an opportunity for me to get back into what I had learned in school. And from a personal perspective, I could write the feelings and emotions that I was experiencing every day of being incarcerated and put it on paper so an individual could sit next to me and go for this ride through the penal system, through the happiness, the joy, the pain, and the sorrow, and the redemption that I was faced by going through the penal system, and let them know that, hey, either you could choose the way to success or you could choose the road to failure. And I chose the road to failure, and as a result, I was in the penal system. But I made the best of a bad situation. I said, I'm going to document as many days of this incarceration. And that's where the vision of the free birds. I was incarcerated, but I knew that one day I would be free to soar like a bird. Thank you.
You're helping a lot of folks by sharing your story. We got it. Thank you. Talk about gratitude.
Well, gratitude is when an individual has to be grateful for something. And I'm grateful for every day that I wake up. I'm grateful that I still have my family in my life. I'm faithful and grateful that I got my brothers and my baby in my life. And I would not have that in my life if I had continued to be engaged in jailable offenses and putting myself at risk of going to jail, incarcerated. I couldn't have all of those dreams and aspirations if I was incarcerated. But as long as I'm free, I can soar like that bird, and I intend to, one day at a time.
You made people not want to have to ride into a penal institution. You documented how you met your roommate. You documented how you went from one roommate to another. You documented, going through the gates, riding up to one facility, dropping people off. I mean, the book talks about a lot of different possibilities and stories. And it's an interesting ride.
A lot of dynamics went into the book, and a lot of feelings and emotions. And a lot of wordplay. When I was at Columbia College, I learned about role play. I'm not sure which word is it. It's coup d'etat or coup de grace. And one of those means the death blow. And I did a lot of wordplay. See, reading is fundamental to education. And if I can motivate an individual to want to read and want to get into that wordplay, they opening up a wealth of information and education that's out there for them. And I just want to be help to tip the iceberg through my story.
Thank you. Powerlessness, courage, open-mindedness, willingness, some of the principles of recovery.
It's great principles. See, and that first one, powerless, you have to realize that you're powerless over people, places, and circumstances and situations. When you realize that you're powerless over people, places, circumstances, and situations, you get power. And here go the key right here. Once you admit that you have no control over others and you realize that you're powerless over them, you get all the wealth of power. And then sometimes you may have to use some cliches to help you get through that. Like when you're involved in controversy or confusion with an individual, serenity is the key. And being that serenity is the key, that's where the serenity prayer kicks in. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I can't change it. So I have to be serene and be quiet. And then with that sense of quiet comes a sense of peace.
Peace and joy.
And joy. And that is the solution. Serenity and gratitude.
Peace and joy is not a manly thing in the hood where we live.
It isn't at all.
So you talked about the CO. You talked about the CO that you got along with, and you talked about some conflict at the end of the book.
Well, in the penal system, some of the correctional officers are they are humans, and they have human values. And then there's officers that don't have human values and human traits, and they treat you like you're just an animal. They don't have no compassion or understanding for other human beings. They bring their feelings and emotions and frustrations to work, and they take it out on the inmates. And the inmates have to suffer that. No, and then they put you way down in a town where you're with a population that's not really used to dealing with Afro Americans, and that causes problems in the relationships as well.
Mm-hmm. You're going to get a chance in a few seconds to just share anything you want about the ride.
Well, I just want to say the ride is a good vehicle to enlighten adolescents about what can happen if you don't stay on the straight and narrow. And like I said, I have a video on YouTube, and it gives you an introduction to the book, and it tells you in the beginning journeys how the ride starts. And it's a summer trip, and the gates open, and you're placed in a bus, and you're taken away from home. That's a very eye-awakening experience from an individual knowing. Now, you're not actually going, but you're sitting next to somebody that's telling you about their journey, so it's like you right next into the seat with them. It's a very enjoyable book, and I recommend it, and you'll be hearing more about me in the future, I promise you.
Thank God for Hand Up Recovery Home, and thank God for gun violence prevention programs. Thank God that the county and the state is putting funds and putting money where their mouth is. I mean, everybody understands that these are tough issues that the community is facing. And
well, I just want to say that I heard about the plan that Mayor Brandon Johnson implemented last week when he hired this guy as the new director of reentry. I thought it was the first time that a positive step to the incarcerated has taken place, and maybe it could open the door to more other resources. I just would think whatever person that advocated and got Brandon Johnson to work with that person could advocate and get them to funnel some of those funds so we could have more grassroots programs for reentry.
Hand Up Recovery Home is located at 4032 West Van Buren, just west of Pulaski. On Thursdays at 5 o'clock, there is a recovery meeting, and we'd like to invite the public to stop by. And anyone that's suffering from, or anyone that's, there's lots of people in the community that have friends or family that have experienced violence, and you got a safe place to talk about it. Occasionally there are therapists. Hand Up Recovery Home has workshops on anger management, has workshops on singles, has workshops on fatherhood, has workshops about staying stopped, has violence reduction programs. And thank God for housing programs. Thank God for domestic violence programs like a Hand Up Recovery Home. And I just want to thank Wilbur Cook, our executive director. You know, they can call 773-213-0802 regarding additional information, or they can stop by our facility. Mr. Whaley?
Okay, I just want to thank Eric for having me and Mr. Cook for allowing her to have me to come and speak. It was a privilege. I hope that the message that I shared today
Education is key.
Educate somebody. That's right. Education is key. And I hope it opens the door of thought.
I hope it's a deterrent and eliminates the ride for countless of our youth and seniors and everyday folks in the hood on the west side, in North Lawndale, in West Garfield, and in Chicago at large.